Hello, I'm Bob the Bookerer, and in a change from our scheduled programming, I'm here to talk about the recent Women's Prize winner. And I'm sure if you've clicked on this, you're probably not necessarily kind of thinking that, spoilers are going to be something that you're wanting to avoid. But I mean, it's worth saying, I will obviously be talking about the winner. And so that is a spoiler. But essentially, we have reached that point. This is sort of very strange in some ways in terms of the regular timing. So this year, the Women's Prize shortlist and then the winner was sort of postponed to slightly later. So typically, in sort of normal years, I guess, the Women's Prize winner is announced and then soon after kind of Booker season begins. But obviously we're now mid Booker season, and we have the winner of the Women's Prize. I was very lucky to go along to an interview kind of the other day with Bernadine Evaristo. I wasn't interviewing her. I mean, I wish. I was very close to her, which is lovely, in London. And she's being interviewed by Pandora Sykes to talk about the Women's Prize and sort of a few other things in sort of Bernadine Evaristo's writing life in general. And it's really interesting, she was talking about how the Booker Prize sort of transformed her life and her career. And, this year she's been chair of the judges for the Women's Prize. And she was speaking about what for her makes a good, what it is that the judges are looking for when they're trying to choose the winner of the Women's Prize. And she spoke about how she wants sort of something new and original, something done excellently, and a book that really kind of is just sort of, it captures something. It's really, accessible and readable for people, but is also, it really hits them. And I've spoken about the shortlist for the Women's Prize. I think it's a fantastic shortlist. Of the 6 books, I liked all of them. I didn't have like massive issues with any of them. 4 of them I gave 5-star reviews to. I was rooting for many of them, and so it's really exciting to sort of see. And before, in my sort of shortlist thing, video, I spoke about how pretty much any of The Vanishing Half, Transcendent Kingdom, Piranesi, and Unsettled Ground, I would be really happy to have win. And I sort of had this sort of from within that, Transcendent Kingdom, Piranesi, or Unsettled Ground as probably my tops. And, but at the same time, any of these books taking it felt okay. Like, I'm happy with this. And we then had the announcement that the winner was Piranesi by Susanna Clarke, which I have to admit I was very, very excited for. I think it's weird. Although the bookies had sort of put it as one of the favourites leading in to it, I kind of thought that they might be a bit off about this. I thought Piranesi, fantastic, fantastic book. But I kind of felt that it's sometimes a bit of a harder sell for a book that's a little bit, it's a bit kind of fantasy. It's a book that deals with really quite complicated issues and ideas, and is quite tricky. And I know some people didn't necessarily go on with it. And so I kind of thought that Piranesi would be one of those books that we kind of look at and go like, yes, really glad it was on that shortlist. It deserved to be there. And then, another book won. So I was delighted. Piranesi is a book, and I've spoken a lot more about all of these books separately in my shortlist wrap-up, so please do check that out if that's of interest, and if you want to find out a little bit about some of the books that were put in that shortlist. But I am just thrilled. I think this is such a gorgeous book. I think it's a deceptively short book. It is a book that kind of really looks at sort of mental health and trauma, but it also does that through this really interesting narrator, this sort of man called Piranesi, who is retracing steps in this labyrinth. And in sort of doing so, we kind of get this idea that he's sort of trying to uncover the past and trying to uncover why he's there. And it's so brilliant. I think I mentioned in my shortlist video for it, but I was on my way to go and see a friend for a Eurovision party, I believe, and was reading Piranesi. And I got to this sort of point, I think I was sort of racing through it on this bus and almost missing stops and everything. And I got off the bus and I was like, I need to finish this book now. I need to. I'm sort of about 20 pages from the end. I have to kind of get through this. And I did. I just sort of stood at the bus stop and sort of just went through it. I say doing that, like it was on a Kindle, so I was sort of just tapping my screen every so often. But either way, and I was so spellbound by this book. I just think it's beautiful, it's stunning. I've not read her sort of first book, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, which is a lot longer. It's about 1,000 pages, and was a sort of big kind of almost cult classic for a bit, and sort of slowly crept into more and more people's hands. And I'm really keen to go and check that out. But I think something that's so special about this win, on a couple of different levels, is firstly, it sort of being a sort of fantasy book, and it's interesting kind of literary prizes that you don't necessarily always get, quote unquote genre fiction or whatever, kind of making it in quite the same way. And I think also I'm just so happy for this book because of Susanna Clarke's own sort of story. So in her speech, speaking about the win, and sort of in podcasts speaking about the book, on the Women's Prize podcast, before the sort of shortlisting, Susanna Clarke spoke really powerfully about how she has been suffering with sort of chronic illness for a long time, and how that chronic illness has really made it far more difficult for her to kind of have the mental sort of energy and clarity to be able to sit and write, but also just the sheer terror of her never knowing if she's actually going to be well enough to put the book out there, and then if she does manage to write it and sort of finish it and go through all the editing, whether she'll have the energy to do the promotion for it, whether she'd have the energy for anything else. And it's just heartbreaking because you sort of realise just how much the woman behind the book has sort of put into this and how much this means to her. And I just think it's so wonderful that not only such a brilliant book has been celebrated and sort of sort of showcased in this way, but also that Susanna Clarke, the author, has that kind of payoff for what must have been an incredibly difficult time. She was flabbergasted because she almost sort of was worried that this would never happen, that she'd never get the book out in the first place. And I just think that's gorgeous. And I really do urge you to go and check out Piranesi as a book. I was so blown away by just how beautiful it is. Massive props also deserve to go to the entire shortlist. The Women's Prize is a sort of prize I've probably been a bit sort of later to the party on, but what I found really sort of impressive about the prize is sort of every year the shortlists I've read, or books that I've read that have been on shortlists of it, have all been books that I've loved or found a lot to really enjoy. So it's a really good prize for just finding some excellent books. If it hadn't been Piranesi, I would have, like I said, I'd have loved Transcendent Kingdom or Unsettled Ground to have won. Vanishing Half too. I think there's so many good books that were on this. I think no one is talking about this and How the One-Armed Sister Sweep the House. Although they didn't always fully work for me, there were still solid 4-star reads that I think are brilliant. And yeah, this just feels like such a lovely thing. I was sat by the canal in London with Larry over at Larry Has Opinions when it was sort of announced. So I kind of just quickly checked my phone. I was like, ooh, there's a winner. And I think we were both sort of so pleasantly surprised that such a wonderful book won. So anyway, my nattering aside, please do go and check out the book. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. And I'm so glad for Susanna Clarke, and I'm so glad for people who will now go and check out Piranesi and see just how wonderful and poignant this book is. I've been Bob the Booker, rambling quite a lot here and sort of sweating because it's quite warm in London right now, and it's also quite late, so I'm going to go to bed. But lovely speaking to you all, and please do go and check out the book. Take care. Bye bye.